Hey, this is Rick Sammon. Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast.
And I'm Martin Bailey, welcoming you to the Picturing Success Podcast.
Hey, how cool is this, Martin? I'm in Croton-on-Hudson, New York, about 1 hour north of New York City, and you're in Japan, in Tokyo?
I am, yes. I'm sitting here in my Tokyo studio. It's coming up to 10 p.m. at night.
Well, this is going to be kind of fun because we've done this a couple of times before with guests. Like we recorded joint podcasts, so it's going to be on your podcast and on our podcast.
Yeah.
And I really have to say, I've been following you for many years, and I always wanted to get you on the podcast. You know, I thought we were busy. We have like 150 podcasts. You have close to 700.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you, by the way. I've been following your antics as well for many years. You've been a huge inspiration. But yeah, I've got 678, I think it is, and so I was actually the third person to have a podcast registered in a photography podcast registered in iTunes. So back in 2005.
Well, you know, again, I thought I was busy, but you have a blog, you have a podcast, you have tours and workshops. You know, I've been to Namibia, and I know you have this great Namibia workshop coming up. You know, if I could go to one place in Africa, this place is amazing because you not only have the awesome wildlife, right?
Yeah.
But you have the largest, oldest sand dunes in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you know, if there's a big storm over there in Africa and the wind is blowing, you know, towards the United States, some of that sand can actually cover the coral reefs.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing. I didn't realize that.
And I love the pictures of the Himba people, right?
Oh,
the Himba people there, they're just so beautiful.
They're stunning.
So you have the podcast, you have the blog, you have the tours, the workshops, portfolios. I see you're a Canon shooter, and you have an iOS app. So honestly, I don't know where to start.
There's lots of stuff, and you know, I mean, anyone from your audience, if they want to check it out, it's all over on my website, and we'll include links and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm the sort of person that I like making things. I mean, that's probably why I'm a photographer in the first place, making photos and that whole, you know, especially once digital came around. And I know, I mean, you've been shooting with film for a lot longer than I was. I shot slides for many years. I enjoyed that. But the computer aspect, when digital came around, helped me to merge two passions. I'd already become very passionate about computers in the 90s. And it all just sort of helped me to build my passion into this huge, it's like a snowball that just keeps getting bigger every year. And I taught myself to program for iOS. I did a couple of weeks course and decided to just write my own app because I thought it would be fun. You know, I surround myself with things that I think are fun. And it's just helping me to have a great life doing this stuff.
Well, yeah, photography is a ton of fun, but if we could just talk about your app for a second,
sure,
or a few seconds. This iOS app, I think it's just like the coolest thing. So why don't you tell our listeners and your listeners about it, just in case they don't know, because I think it's the coolest thing, and you can always have it with you, and it helps with depth of field. What I really like about it, by the way, is the feature you have in there on calculating long exposures.
Yes, yeah. So the app is called Photographer's Friend, and it's basically three calculators in one app. And the first one that you'll see is the depth of field app, and that is, or the depth of field calculator. The special thing about that, and I'm working along mentally along the icons on the bottom of the frame here, so I'm going to get to your the ND calc in a moment. But the depth of field calculator is special because I actually built in a mode called the Pixel Peepers mode. And what that does is you enter how many megapixels your camera is, in addition to things like your sensor size, so that we can calculate the size of the pixels. And then I actually calculate the depth of field based on your resolution. And a lot of people don't realize that higher resolution cameras, when you check at 100% on a computer screen, if you're a pixel peeper like I am, then you actually have a shallower depth of field than a lower resolution camera. So, if you go back to the old 8x10 print at arm's length for the original calculation, doesn't matter how many megapixels you have. But a lot of people these days do zoom in and check focus at full size, and it matters. So I built that in. The second calculator, as you'd noticed there, Rick, is the ND calculator, the neutral density filter calculator. And the cool thing about that, and I know this is sort of like blowing my own trumpet here, but I really wanted to make it so that it was possible to stack as many filters as you want. In reality, if you stack more than 2 or 3 filters, you start to get vignetting you get black corners on the lens. But if you can stack them, you can actually calculate it. But the cool thing here as well, just like in the depth of field calculator, I go down to microns or sub microns of depth of field if you throw the calculations that way. With the ND filter, you can actually calculate exposures up to 30 years. So it's the reason that's fun is because you change your phone, and it would actually go past changing phones because it saves it in a way. But the cool thing with that is that it's really good for education. You can show people how much the filters work and how much time they add, and just keep going up to literally over 30 years. So it's a bit of fun.
Well, I'm 70 next year, so on my 100th birthday, I'm going to download the app, and I'm going to start using it today, and I'll have you back, when I'm 100, and it'll be fun. But what's interesting, Martin? You're like and take this in a nice way. You're like a tech nerd who could do all this stuff, but the fun and the joy of your photography, comes through. I know people who go on your workshops, they love you. You make it fun. You make it interesting. You bring joy. And I think that's an interesting combination because there's a lot of people out there, who just, try to make it fun and they don't know all this technical stuff. But what you were saying about the pixel peepers and the depth of field, all this stuff can make you a better photographer for sure.
But it's a lot of the time it's just a lot of fun as well. I like to make my workshops fun, and I like people to learn stuff as well. So yeah, it all just sort of mixes in together. And I realize that that's very much how your workshops are as well, and your tours. They're a lot of fun. You play your guitar on some of your, or is that on the stage? I've seen you playing on a stage in the past.
Yes, at Photoshop World, I was playing up there with Scott Kelby. Well, our listeners can't see, but you have 2 keyboards in your studio there. I have one in my office here, and I have a Yamaha Clavinova in my house. And
brilliant.
If I buy another guitar, my wife is going to kill me. She walks down to my studio. She says, it's like a music store.
Yeah,
But, that's another thing that you and I have in common, Scott Kelby. Ansel Adams, right? Some people don't know. He was a concert pianist. He was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that draws musicians to photography and vice versa is the mood and the feeling. Like I'm looking at your page here, Martin Bailey Photography, your home page, and I see this picture from Namibia again, where you're doing this workshop. When is the workshop, by the way?
It's June 2020. I've got a few places left on that one. Yeah,
you have a picture of a Himba girl. It's just so strong in the right hand corner of your page for this. I don't know whether it's a natural light shot or a flashlight shot or a strobe shot, but it's the mood and the feeling that is so important, and that's the same thing with music. I don't know if you have you seen any of the master classes?
I have, yes, yeah.
Well, I watched I saw the Santana master class.
I haven't watched that.
Well, he doesn't talk about what key he's playing in or what notes or a scale or this mode for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, Martin. All he talks about is the feeling of the music, and I think that's the same thing in photography. And if the photographers go out there and they're going to pixel peep and say, oh, I have to get the sharpest possible image with the most depth of field or the least depth of field, they're really missing it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that getting the technical aspects is important, but I think it's the most important thing is getting a shot that causes some kind of an emotional reaction in the viewer. And yeah, you mentioned that shot of the Himba girl. That's is it the one where she's looking to the side?
Yes, it looks like you're above her, slightly above her. She's looking down. She has a very pensive look and a very dark background.
Yeah, I have to add one from this year. I've actually been photographing this young girl since she was I think younger than the ones on my tour page. But she's now she's got the full Himba hair. With the clay in her hair, and I'm actually watching this girl grow up. I've got photos of her every few years, and I got one this year where I just caught her off guard, and she's looking down slightly, and I mean, I know I shouldn't say it myself, but it's a stunning look, and it is natural light. We actually take them inside their huts and just photograph them with the light from the door.
I think I have a picture of the same girl, and we did the same thing because you use that hut, that black background, as a studio. And sometimes what we did is the light was coming up behind the hut, so we use a reflector to bounce some light onto the subject's face. But it's the mood, it's the feeling.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk about, they are beautiful, beautiful people. One of the things I talk about, I have this new book out, as you know, it's called Phototherapy, Motivation and Wisdom. I talk about emotional intelligence for photographers. And, Daniel Goleman has this great book out, Emotional Intelligence. I think he had a follow-up too, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. But you're not going to get a shot like that if you don't have emotional intelligence, meaning that you have to be aware of your body language, what you're saying, the energy, the emotion, all the stuff that you're projecting. It's not about, I'm going to set it at f8 and get a shot. And so I think this emotional intelligence is something I really like to talk about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We actually start our Himba people session with, we leave the cameras in the vehicle, and we just go in and we shake their hands, and I teach the group how to say good morning in the Himba language and everything. And we go in and we just spend 20, 30 minutes just having jokes and, just talking and saying hello to everybody. And then we ask them if it's okay if we can go and get our cameras. You don't necessarily have to do that, but it helps. And we have such an amazing cultural experience through doing that. And they often allow us, that I don't know if it might even be the same place that you go, but that what they'll do is that when they get to a point where they think, okay, we've had enough, it's time to go, they'll set up a little stall and you buy some of their trinkets to thank them.
Right.
Yeah. And so sometimes they take forever to set that stall up, and that just makes me feel so happy because it's saying to me that we're happy for you to just be here. And that is golden for a group. A lot of it just comes from the way we ease into the shoot. We don't just walk in. I see people walk in, don't even say hello, and just start firing away. And that to me is just incredible. You've got to get on a human level. You've got to get down to a respectful one-to-one level, even if you don't understand each other's languages.
Well, first of all, I think it is the same village because I recognize the girl and the man smoking the pipe there. But what you're saying is you have to give something before you take something, meaning a picture.
Exactly.
And when I travel, I have a little bag of magic tricks with me.
Oh yeah.
There's a store in New York City called Tannen's Magic. It's also online. Yeah. And they sell every trick you've ever seen on TV, including like David Blaine's trick where, he finds a stranger, they pick a card, he throws the deck at a window, and the card that's picked is on the other side of the window. So anyway, it's called Tannen's Magic. But when I go places, like we were in Botswana recently, and at night, what I did is I did like a magic show for about an hour. And the people liked it. Actually, they thought I was like, I think one person thought I was a devil because I was doing like this really card magic trick that it's really hard to figure out. But, it's once you know the trick, it's not that hard. But when we were in the Royal Kingdom of Bhutan, when we're in these Buddhist monasteries, I'm doing magic tricks first because I want them to like me, or at least accept me, and let me into their lives to, get a very important picture. And let me ask you a question,
sure,
if I may.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I look at my people pictures and I get emotional.
Yeah.
Because these people are with me forever, like that Himba girl, right? Or the man smoking the pipe, or someone in Bhutan. And so they're with me forever, and I have a clear recollection. But then, I mean, these Buddhist monks, I'm sure they forgot about me like the next. Well, I'm not sure. They might have forgotten about me, or they might have remembered, hey, this guy
the guy
really,
with the magic.
The guy with the magic. But do you get, I guess what I'm saying is, do you have an emotional attachment to your pictures?
A lot of the time, yeah.
And for people?
For the people, yeah. And sometimes for the animals, I mean, I don't, obviously not quite the same. It's a different thing, but absolutely. I always try to get the names of the people who we shoot. For example, I don't know them all, but I know the guy with the pipe in the shot, his name's Hideon. And the young girl, her name's Makihoro. And so just being able to recall names of people, it again, is to me, it helps me to relate to the images. But yeah, for sure, even if it's only a fleeting moment, I generally have a kind of a connection with the person and feel emotional. The longer projects, like photographing that girl year in, year out, I mean, I really want to photograph her with her child. I think that there'll be a time. She's now got the shell on her chest, which says that she's eligible to get married. She's still young, but she's started to look. And so I think there's going to be not many years past now until I get there and she'll have a child. And that is going to be, for me, at least a major milestone in the project of photographing that girl each year. And I can tell you right now, the moment I see that, it's going to be hard to keep my eyes dry.
Right.
Yeah.
You said something, Martin, in passing, that is some of our listeners may have not have noticed, but you said that shell, says she's eligible to get married. And my point is, learning about the culture makes the pictures much more interesting. Like, I go to the rainforest. I go to the Brazilian rainforest, and everyone has seen pictures of the people in the rainforest with their faces painted, right?
Yeah.
And all these designs. So I asked, what's that all about? And they said, well, they paint their faces so when they go into the rainforest, that the spirits and the gods of the rainforest help and protect them, help them with the hunts and protect them.
Yeah.
So learning, and like, have you been to Papua New Guinea?
I haven't, no.
Well, Papua New Guinea is amazing.
Yeah.
Learning about the culture there. In Papua New Guinea, you don't wake up someone who's sleeping.
Yeah.
Because what they believe that when they're sleeping, the spirit leaves their body and takes revenge on people who have done bad things to their family.
Oh, wow.
So this learning, I think a lot of people, they buy a $5,000 camera. They want to go to Namibia with you, or Africa, or Bhutan, or Antarctica, especially Antarctica and the high Arctic where I've been, and they don't get involved in really what's going on, which is basically in Antarctica and the high Arctic and Greenland is climate change.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You could say, wow, look at this. The sea is filled with all this beautiful ice and these beautiful blue icebergs, and the shapes and the formations and the colors. It's like being like on another planet. But then you have to realize that the reason this is happening is because of climate change, right?
Yeah. I had a wonderful opportunity to take a helicopter ride over the main ice shelf in Greenland a few years ago. And I shot images that I got back, and I knew roughly where I was, but I went onto Google Earth or Google Maps and started to check the names of the glaciers. And it didn't take me many minutes to realize that one of the fjords had completely emptied of ice and I checked the date of the map, and it was like 10 years or so. And we're talking 50 kilometers or so of, I think it was maybe a little bit less than that, but it was a ridiculously high amount of kilometers or miles of fjord that had completely thawed in just 10 years. And it was frightening to see that. And that was 3 years ago, and I'm seeing footage of the same area now. There are huge lakes of water up there where the ice is thawing, basically, and it's scary.
No, it's very scary. I don't know if you've seen David Attenborough's latest show, Our Planet, and he talks about that.
I don't think I have yet. No. It normally takes a little bit of a lag to get it on Japanese TV.
It's amazing. So anyway, what else is going on in your busy life?
Well, not probably quite as much as yours. I mean, you mentioned earlier you've got a new book, and I want to congratulate you on that. I've scanned through it very quickly today because we only planned this yesterday. But thanks for sending it over. It's you say in the beginning that, you know, it's your 40th book. So, I mean, that's another congratulations right there. You know, 39 was a big number. 40, you know, we're rounding up in tens now. That's absolutely an incredible achievement. So congrats on that. But you talk about how there are no photos between the covers. What happened? How did it all come about? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, I figured, you know, I have 39 books, and I figured, hey, maybe people don't need to see another Rick Sammon picture. Although I do have some new pictures, but actually, that's my joke. But it's called Phototherapy, Motivation, and Wisdom. And the reason I did not put my pictures in there or any pictures in there is because I didn't want people to get distracted by my pictures. Like we were talking about your picture of the beautiful picture of the Himba girl. People might go and they might want to say, okay, I'm going to try to get at that exact Martin Bailey shot, right?
Exactly.
And I didn't want people to say, I'm going to get that exact Rick Sammon shot. What I wanted to do, and I know you feel this way. I've been around a little longer than you have.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to do that 30-year long exposure with your app. So we'll talk again when I'm 100. And I'll say when you're successful, like you are, and I'm doing okay, and Scott Kelby and some of these other people, I think part of our responsibility is to motivate and to inspire people. Yeah. And that's what I really wanted to do with this book. I had a book, I think one of my early books that was packed with my best pictures and a lot of information. And one of the reviews on Amazon was, and I'm sure you read reviews. One of the reviews said, well, there's excellent information in the book. I learned a lot, but Rick Sammon was showboating, meaning he was showing his best pictures from 100 countries or something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a book with just no pictures, just 35. Actually, it started out as 20,000 words. It turned into 35,000 words. So I actually got some arthritis pain in my thumbs while doing it. But I sent it around to some people, and Trey Ratcliffe, I'm sure you know Trey Ratcliffe.
Absolutely, yeah.
He loved the idea. He wrote the foreword.
Yeah.
Scott Bourne wrote the introduction. I have Richard Burnaby, who's he was a National Geographic photographer, and he does workshops all over the world. He contributed. So I have all these contributors really trying to motivate people. And there's nothing in there about Camera Raw, Lightroom, Aperture. It's really about a lot of life lessons that I've learned that I think will help people become better photographers and maybe better travelers. Like we were just saying, like you go to the Himba village and you spend time and I do the magic tricks. So I'm so proud of this book, and it was released a month ago and it's still #1 in new releases on Amazon. So I think there are people out there who want to get inspired and get motivated and not just say, I'm going to get the sharpest picture and use Martin Bailey's app to peep my pixels.
So, yeah, you know, it's a shame that people sometimes write comments like that, you know, but they, as they say, you can't please everyone all of the time. But it did affect you in a way that made you think about, you know, what you could possibly do here. And that's obviously a good thing as well. It was refreshing, you know. I mean, like I say, I haven't read every word, but I've had a really good look through today. And I think I've pretty much covered the book, but just sort of very quickly, and I'm a slow reader normally, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, there were parts in there. Say, for example, near the beginning of the book, you talk about your feeling that your camera is sort of a license of sorts. And I can totally relate to that. Just like you were as well. You say that you wouldn't have traveled to as many places, or you wouldn't have had as many flights, you said. I mean, you've traveled to over 100 countries. I've traveled nowhere near as much as you, but I know for sure that I wouldn't have got on the planes that I did if it wasn't for the fact that I was going to make photographs. And so I can really relate to this license thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, it does. Like when you're in the Himba village, right? It gives you that license to go in and photograph the person, and it gives you an opportunity. And what I say, actually the book started out on my workshops. After we all talk about camera raw and processing and technical and what lens and the exposure triangle. At the end of my workshops, I ask people, "What does your photography mean to you?"
Yeah.
And I say, we're not talking about I like to photograph elephants or flowers. Yeah. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And the answers people give, sometimes people cry. I started about 20 years ago. We were around a campfire out in Montana. And I asked people, what does your photography mean to you? And I've heard, it saved my life. It gave them something. It gave me an outlet. You said at the beginning of our conversation that you wanted to do something that was fun.
Yeah.
So actually, that's one of the early chapters. What does your photography mean to you? And I asked the reader, what does it mean? And I think whether it's what does your music mean to you? What does your photography mean to you? What does your daily exercise mean to you, which I can't live without, by the way. Once we realize what it means to us, I think that can help us actually take better pictures.
Absolutely.
Because we're relating, we're thinking, Ansel Adams said, the best accessory is the 12 inches behind the camera, meaning your brain.
Yeah. I wish I'd got a 12-inch brain, but it's...
Well, mine's not 12, but I think he meant whatever
within that 12 inch, yeah. I'm really not that good at just walking up to strangers. I mean, I'm better at it when I'm traveling, when I'm in a different place and when I'm in that mode. With me, it's not so much a license. I think of it as permission. Same thing. So I'm like, it gives me permission to do things that I wouldn't be doing if it wasn't for the photograph and for the camera. And I think David Duchamp was saying at some point that it's the fear of not getting the camera, the photo, that drives him more than the actual desire to get the photo. Sort of like the fact that you could walk away from a situation without something. You regret that more than, that's the drive for some of his photos. I think it was David. It may not have been. But I feel for me that it's probably about half and half. I've got a desire to get the photograph, but I'm also haunted by a number of images that I've failed to make over the years because of one reason or another. Maybe we were in a hurry to get somewhere. You think, I'll get that on the way back, and the light is completely different. And I've learned that, when light's doing something, you do it while the light's doing it, and you do it sort of now, even if it means rescheduling a few other things. So I completely can relate to that all.
Well, I have a story, and I'm laughing about that because about the fear of not getting the image. So Susan, my wife, and I went to Cuba. We've been there a few times. And Cuba, I would say, I'm exaggerating a little, 80 to 90% of the cars are painted blue.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They're just old cars.
They're great.
And what's amazing
cars,
is it could be a Chevy car with a Ford transmission, with a Plymouth carburetor. How they keep these things running is amazing. Anyway, we're there for a week, and I'm photographing all these blue cars, with the slow motion. Should have had your ND app with me, by the way. But the slow motion in bright light and low light with the people around them. I had so many pictures of the blue cars. So the last day we're there, we drive up to this beautiful beach. And there was an old, beautiful blue car under a palm tree. The water behind was just such a beautiful blue. The sky was great. The sky was blue. And I said to Susan, you know what? I don't need another picture of a blue car. And to this day, I really wish I had that picture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever get that way where you feel like you're done shooting?
I've got a really good memory from... In 2012, I did 3 Antarctica voyages back to back. And I remember on the third one, I was in a cove. I forget the name of it. Some cove where there was like Gentoo penguins washing up. They were jumping out onto the beach every so often. And I literally got to the point where I thought, I'm just going to sit down and just take this in for a moment. It was a warm day for Antarctica. Right. And I sat there on a rock, and Gentoo penguins jumping out onto the beach and then seeing me and running off one way or the other. And there was a glacier over to the right that carved, and I remember hearing it first and then turning around and I could see a wave, and there was this little mini tidal wave sort of came across and washed up the beach where I was. And I just thought, this is just so idyllic. I felt as though, I couldn't have been happier. I didn't get a single photo of the Gentoo coming up onto the beach. I didn't photograph the glacier carving, but the memory is still incredibly vivid. I can smell the air and I can feel the warmth of the sun just recalling it. And so, absolutely, yes.
Well, there's nothing like being in Antarctica, right? You said you did 3 back-to-back trips. How was your trip going over the Drake? Was it the Drake Shake or the Drake's Lake?
We had, because we went back across the Drake, and on the same day loaded new passengers and went back. I'm probably one of the few people on the planet that's done 6 consecutive days on the Drake. And that 6 days on it was pretty rough, and they were all Drake Shakes. We actually flew out from King George Island on the way out on the last voyage. So I did 5 crossings that year, and one of the 5 was relatively smooth. The others, I've actually got a video on my website that it's in a slideshow, and it shows you. We were on the flight deck on the 5th floor, I think it was, and a wave comes over the bow of the ship and actually washes the windows on the 5th floor. So it was pretty wacky stuff. That's in the middle of one of my videos.
Can you send us the link to that? Because I just clicked on your site and I see Antarctica, including South Georgia, Falklands, and Patagonia.
Yeah, there's a video. If you go under portfolios, there is a line of videos. It says video portfolios. It's the second one.
Okay, we'll look there.
Yeah.
You know what? I'd like to talk about this. This is very interesting to me. What drew me to Antarctica when I was invited the first time to teach to lead a tour there, I said, "Man, the wildlife's going to be amazing." Yeah. But then I fell in love with the blue ice.
Yeah.
And you have amazing pictures of the blue ice in black and white. And I love these black and white pictures.
Which one? Let me go and see.
Maybe it's Patagonia.
There's some of them. So I have. There's some Patagonia in there as well. I do have a couple of black and white images, but I think some from, what did they call it? Desperation. I think that's what it's called. I forget. But I've got a few. Both. Yeah, a lot of the black and white, there wasn't so much ice in them. There's some from the Falklands in black and white, but some of these are, looking back now, some of these are a little bit more over-processed compared to what I would do now. I'm working in different software.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you admitted it, because as photographers, sometimes we should look back and ask ourselves the question, did I do the best job, right?
Yeah. I remember a lot of the time for these images, I was using Color Effects Pro. And I think I pumped a few of them up a little bit too much. Some of them I've reworked. And what I've been doing is, over the years, because I started using Capture One Pro 3 years ago. Right. And I run a membership thing on like an MVP Pro, we call it. And it's a paid membership on my site. And one of the benefits of that membership is you get a free wallpaper each month. It's only a small thing, but I had to prepare the October one on the weekend. And as I usually do, I sat with my wife and we looked through my images to pick a photo. And I picked an old photo from Japan of 3 koi fish in a stream. It just felt sort of summery to us, end of summer sort of thing. And I've been trying to reprocess all of my work. With anything that I release new, I've been trying to reprocess in Capture One Pro. And it takes me no more than 3 to 5 minutes to process an image at max, normally just a few seconds. And this once I took about 3 hours to do because I was trying to get a look that I got years ago, and it wasn't quite working. And I wanted to get this sort of a transparent feel and everything. So reworking images, I've actually got a blog post about that. As you just said, sometimes it is important to go back and look at your work. And I think it's nice to have a stake in the ground at certain places. It's almost like our photographic history. But I don't think there's anything wrong with going back and reprocessing old work as well and seeing it with your new self. It's like the Martin version 2019 or Rick version 2019 as opposed to 2012.
Well, it's like with music, as technology changes, the Beatles, right? The Beatles remastered album. They have this new, I forget what it's called, but it has like some of the original takes and the outtakes and the remastered with the better sound and the better stereo, and whatever. So I think it's really good to go back and evaluate our images. And the reason I'm smiling is one of my books was I did a book on HDR. Oh, yeah. When HDR, it's not so popular now, but like 8 years ago, it was really popular.
Yeah.
And I look at some of the chapters and I say, what was I thinking? Right?
Yeah. I've always been I'm kind of glad I never got into HDR. And I've always said to people on my workshops and that if it's something that feeds your creativity, if you enjoy it, then it's fine. I would never tell anybody that how they should feel about the photography, but I'm kind of glad I didn't get into it myself. I've done, I think, 3 in 20 years, and I didn't really like them very much. I don't think I ever showed them anybody.
Well, when I teach HDR, the first thing I do when we're in a classroom and we're hooked up to the internet, I tell everyone, I say, do a search on Google, I hate HDR. You get about 3,000 pages because, people do the grungy effect looks great on an old car, but it's not going to look great on an iceberg. Or the halos, the dreaded halos. So anyway, but I do think it is important to go back and review our images. Talking about workshops, and again, you have this great Namibia workshop coming up. One of the chapters I have in this new book, it's called group phototherapy.
Yeah,
right.
That's good chapter.
And thank you very much. I really feel like going on a workshop is kind of like group therapy because people are positive. You're getting input. You're learning. You're growing. You're sharing. And I ask people at the beginning of the workshop, the first day, I always ask people, what's the best thing you learned? And then at the end of the workshop, I say, what was the hardest thing about the workshop? And a lot of people say the hardest thing about the workshop is saying goodbye.
Yeah, that's nice.
And don't you find that? Like if you bring people to these amazing places and you become friends with them.
Absolutely.
I find sometimes it's really hard to say goodbye.
Yeah. I've had the same thing. I mean, some groups are more so than others, but the ones where you get a lot of people that click, it's amazing to see those people go back to their lives and then stay in touch. And then you'll hear a few years later, oh, I've just done a workshop in Svalbard with so and so and from the same group, and these people stay in touch, and some even arrange to come back onto my workshops again so that they can re-meet, and it really is, and of course I'd be pretty cold if I didn't make friends with a few as well, So I mean, I've made some wonderful friends just through my workshops, and so I agree. Sometimes it's really hard. I like the way you start that chapter, the one about the group therapy, where I think that's the one where you started saying, how many times in your life have you gotten up and drove in the dark and then to get to the sunrise on your own and or by yourself. And it's true. I mean, you don't mind working like hell to get a photograph when you're in a group situation, but we don't do it quite as often if it's just us going to be out there. It's a really well formatted chapter.
Because you don't want to miss anything, right?
Right. Well, that's a big part of it. But I think the camaraderie and just the whole part about being in a group and just living and breathing photography for I don't know, a lot of my tours are like 12 days. My Namibia tours are epic 17 days. It's a huge trip.
17?
Yeah, it's the longest trip I do, and it really is it's an epic trip. I call it the Complete Namibia Tour. Well, Complete Namibia Tour and Workshop. And that's because I believe, I mean, there are a few places that we don't go by design, but we cover all of the main areas, and then we spend the last 4 days in the Etosha National Park. So it really is an epic tour to be on, and people seem to really like it.
Well, that's in June 2020, and the information is going to be in our show notes. We're coming down to the end of our time. We usually like to keep the shows to about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with? Both our audience.
You know, I was when we talked about getting together for a chat, I was thinking that I'd talk a little bit about being prepared for action, so to ready to shoot when you are out on safari in Africa, because that's really one of the things that's on my mind at the moment. I've just got back a couple of months ago, and I absolutely love Africa. I'm also working with some people on a new Botswana tour as well. So great to be considering going back. I know that your approach to photography is a little bit different, but I sort of, for myself, what I try to do is I actually feel more comfortable just being in manual mode. And I know that for wildlife, people like to use an automated mode. For myself, what I do, just to make sure that I'm always ready to get a shot if something happens, especially in Etosha, because you're not allowed out of the vehicle. You're only allowed to get out of the vehicle in the designated areas. So what I do is, as we drive around, I, of course, always make sure I've got the right lens on. If the wildlife is far away, I'll maybe put an extender on, and I'll just keep it on my lap. And if it's dusty, say if we have the windows open, just drape a cloth over it or something to keep the dust off. But I always keep it there. And then every few minutes, I'll just raise the camera and adjust the exposure. If it's clear in Africa, it's generally pretty much the same exposure once the sun's up until it starts to dip again. But you might be working in shadows. You have to change it a little bit, but I'm really enjoying these days. I've been working with EOS R bodies, and I have
Me too.
I've got the control ring adapter, which I've set up to change the ISO, so I can actually just change the exposure with a ring now, like I'm zooming, and I love that. Plus, you can see it right there in the electronic viewfinder. So every so often, I just check my exposure, make sure that that's on. I generally, if I'm going to be photographing one animal, I'll open up the aperture a little bit for a shallower depth of field. I'll often, if there's going to be more than one animal, a group of animals, I'll stop down to like f10 or so, because the depth of field, which I check with my app, is obviously going to be shallower. It's not quite as deep as people often think if you're using a high resolution camera, and I just want to get more faces sharp, and then really just be ready. Don't put the cap on. Just keep yourself in a position where you can get to your camera really quickly, ideally on your lap, and then if something happens, just be ready to get your windows down. I remember a few years ago, our driver saw a southern pale chanting goshawk, which is it's like a little hawk, and it dived down and caught a skink and he pulled up, and I didn't even remember getting the photograph until I got back to the hotel or the lodge. And literally, as the car braked and came to a halt, I got one frame of this goshawk in the air with the skink. And like I say, I'd forgotten about it, but the fact that I was ready and my exposure was all there helped me to get a shot that I'm really happy to have got. And it was all just because of being ready. The autopilot got the shot because I literally, like I say, I couldn't even remember releasing the trigger. I was on complete autopilot, but that was possible because of the preparation. So that's my elevator speech about being ready. I just like, especially on safari when there's animals around, it's nice to be ready to capture something if you are if you're presented with an opportunity that you don't quite expect. And that always happens in Africa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my final words of wisdom are, it's a Buddhist saying, and the saying is, learning is health.
You've got that in your book too.
When we stop learning.
Yeah, I love it.
That's in the book.
Yeah.
And it's true. My father died at 92, and at 92, I'm teaching him Photoshop, and the only thing he had trouble was learning how to use the clone stamp tool, because it's, the option click, and moving it over. But he was interested in learning to 92, and I think when we stop learning, whether it's photography, about life, about the cultures, about the environment, about Photoshop and Lightroom, that's when we're going to, get Alzheimer's or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And speaking of that, I hope I don't have Alzheimer's when I'm recording you on the podcast when I'm 100, because I can make that 30-year exposure with your app. And I just will end by, I'll just say, thank you, everyone, for listening to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to Rick's Picturing Success podcast.
We'll catch you later, and thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. We got to do it again.
Absolutely. I had a blast, Rick. Thank you very much, and I do look forward to doing it again.
I'll see you, my friend. Maybe we'll play some music together, too.
That would be great. I'd love that. Absolutely. Yeah, thanks very much.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I didn't throw you off too much at the start with both Rick and I introducing each other's shows. For links to the various things that we talked about during our conversation, please visit the blog post at mbp.ac/679. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.